Here we are. Good day, Tina Marie. How many years have I been begging you to come on the show? Or not
Well,
really,
uh,
just bragging about doing this show?
yeah, maybe just a few, not as long as we've known each other, but I think like since the pandemic hit and you really started things, um, you've kind of been talking to me about you should come on my show. And I was like, no, or
You're like, I don't cook.
no,
We'll
you
talk
don't
more. Let's,
understand. My house came with a kitchen. Like I used to, and this is a true story. When I lived in an apartment, it was just a small apartment in the city. I used my oven to store my sweaters because I just didn't have, I lived in a
you
studio.
never tell me that.
Yeah.
I know
And
you've
so I
told
was
me some
like, there's
outrageous
only so
things about
much
not being
space.
a cook.
Yeah, in this tiny closet. So I used my oven to like put my folded sweaters and jeans. So
So, my usual question is, why did you pick this recipe then? I think you started to answer it there.
well, it was, when you're a single girl living in a studio apartment in Chicago, the one thing that was always affordable when you're right out of college and easy to make and edible, even if you jack it up, was a grilled cheese. So I ate a lot of them. And I think that
When you
over
say
the
jack
years,
it up, you mean put like pepper jack cheese in it, right?
no, no, I mean like burn it or it falls apart, or maybe you like experimented with a cheese you had and it wasn't a good melting cheese and you're like, I'm gonna eat it anyway. Like it was like the one thing I could cook that I had zero anxiety and pressure. And then if people came over, I was like, "Yeah, I'll just throw together a grilled cheese because that was something I had kind of done enough that I felt confident with.
Now you can get away with that with the kind of cheese we're talking about, American cheese. It stays good like forever.
Right.
Some cheeses, well, actually, most cheeses stay good forever. Part of the reason why I asked you to do this one is we've had a lot of requests because grilled cheese is not part of non-European culture. A lot of people in the world that have no idea. So for them, this is exotic. For us, it's hey, let's just make it. So I guess that what they say in Chicago. Hey, let's just make it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a Chicago thing, but I definitely know it is definitely because I have family in England and studied art in France, and I will say they have some variations. Like in England, it would be called a cheese toastie, but when I made it for my friends and family in England the way I'm going to make it today, they were completely surprised because that was not how they were making it there. And they actually really liked the way I made it. I will say that the way I make it has more fat. So, of course, it has more flavor than what they were doing. So I think that attributes to why they liked it so much. And then in France, I think of like croque monsieur, which is a popular dish that you could see at most cafes and restaurants, definitely in Paris, but even in smaller villages, it's just kind of a simple staple. And it's similar to the grilled cheese is a staple here in America. You go to any diner or chain restaurant even, and you're probably going to see on the kids menu, kids grilled cheese. So it's definitely an easy go-to.
All right, so here we'll go over the ingredients. It's well, cheese and bread, right?
Yeah. And softened butter, like room softened butter. Now I will tell you, I
Okay.
forgot to take some butter out. I
Yeah,
made
I forgot.
breakfast. And so I actually just put it in the microwave for about 5 to 7 seconds to soften it.
So I don't have a microwave, so I what I'll do is I'll put it in this little fry pan
To
and
soften
then
it. Yeah, because you want it to be spreadable. And I like salted butter, because the salt adds a little bit of flavor because you're not adding any spices to this recipe. But also, it's great because you don't have to refrigerate it, right? So you always have softened butter handy.
so your recipe said sliced bread, American cheese, and a white American cheese and salted butter.
Yep. And the bread could be any type of bread. It could be rye, it could be wheat, it could be white, it could be an oat. I'm using
Wait a second,
today.
I could have got some kind of fancy bread.
Yeah, and I love
Um,
this brand.
Look at this.
I'm using
Talk about
honey.
fat. I got butter bread.
Yeah. So I'm using honey wheat today because that's just a preference for me. I like wheat or grainy breads. I try to fit in as much nutritional value. And I do read labels, I might add. And so you might have like a honey wheat and a wheat or maybe an oat bread. And I like to read the contents and I'm looking for fiber, protein, but most importantly, salt and sugar content. So people are surprised at when they look at labels how much sugar and salt is in bread that you purchase at the store. So I
So are
usually
you
go,
looking at more or less?
I'm looking for less. Because I'm just always trying to think of like if I have a choice, what has more nutrient content to it? And that's everything that I shop for. But with
All right.
bread, I've learned that how much sugar is in things here in America versus overseas. And it just shocks me. So when I can, I definitely look at the sugar content. I'm not diabetic. Again, it's just that there is so much hidden sugar in everything that we purchase at our local stores if you're not growing your own or raising your own, that I try to be conscious of having some control over lowering my sugar content.
So just to let you know, you have forced me to buy cheese that I never buy, which is these ones with the individual plastic.
Oh, really? So I got mine from the deli at my local grocery store.
Now the American cheese, they had it in there,
Yeah.
individual slice, but I didn't get home really quick and it kind of like melted together. So it might be a little
Okay.
hard to pull them apart. But
You'll be okay.
anyway,
So a little bit about
it's
myself I
comfort.
want to share really quick is that so the kitchen and cooking and one of the reasons I said, "Oh, I'll cook grilled cheese" was because I have such anxiety in the kitchen because I grew up in a household where I had a Polish American grandmother who made everything from scratch growing up. And I mean, she would wake up and start cooking at 10 a.m. to have the meal come out of the oven at 5. My grandpa would come home around 4:30 from the factory, and then the food would be on the table, and everybody's butts had to be in the table when the oven opened. That was the rule in the household. And she just cooked everything from scratch. So, of course, I tried to learn from her. And as a child, when she would be teaching me how to cook and I would be her helper, she was not a very good teacher, I would say. She would shout at me if I made one little mistake, or she said, "That's not how you do it. Just give it to me." And she would just take it from my hands
And
and
she
do it
probably
herself.
didn't have any recipes. It was all just,
Nope, nope, nothing was written down. And so years and years of this and getting shouted at gave me anxiety in the kitchen. So I kind of, as I got older, I want to say about 12 or 13, I started saying, forget it. I'm not doing this. I'm not helping. I don't want to know. I'll eat it. It's delicious, but I don't want to know. And so my mom, I grew up with a single mom. She was a politician in Chicago. So she wasn't home a lot. So we ate a lot at my grandparents' house. But when my mom was home, I kid you not, if my mom's watching, I apologize. She was the type of mother that after a really long week at the Capitol would fly back to Chicago and then she would stop at like Dunkin' Donuts, get some donuts and a gallon of milk and be like, "Here's dinner." Of course, as kids, we were like, "Great." But she just wasn't in the kitchen cooking either. So then I had a bad experience in my early 20s where I tried to cook for a boyfriend and he was Italian, like wasn't Italian American. He was Italian. He was Bade's and he had very high standards for cooking. And I think I made him steak and potatoes. And he just criticized the heck out of me about how old is this meat and how long did you cook this potato? Did you put any salt in this? And so it was such a bad experience that it said, I don't want to cook for anybody. So I really spent 20 years being a single girl, living on my own and just cooking for myself. Now, my interest in the kitchen and cooking is fairly recent. And I think this is also, or why you thought, okay, Tina, it's time. You need to come on the show, even if it's something small, was because I got into a relationship about a year and a half ago. And he's from Kentucky. He's a Southern man. He's an excellent cook. In fact, I'm going to show you, he moved in with me here in Illinois. And I had 2 junk drawers in my kitchen. Who doesn't have a junk drawer? And I had to convert my junk drawers into spice drawers for this man. So I'm gonna show you, these are the drawers. And so I converted them.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So is that love or what, right? I got rid of my junk drawers and made him spice drawers in the kitchen. And so he's an excellent, excellent cook. He's not a chef, he's just a home chef. And I started thinking, okay, I want to cook for this man. I want to learn how to cook for this man so that when he comes home, I work from home, he works in an office, that I could have something prepared. And so I started looking up TikTok recipes or things on Facebook, easy
So
recipes at first.
you started receiving food as love, and you wanted to return that
As a love
food
language, yeah.
as love.
Yeah, because before it was an anxiety for
I'm
me.
tearing up a little bit.
Yeah, and so it became a love language for me. And he loves it. I love how happy it makes him when I put together a meal. And he's got this southern accent, and his word when something's really good is fire. So he'll take a bite of something and he'll say, "Babe, this is fire.
Oh,
This is fire. This is fire."
fire,
And
fire.
so I'm like, okay, I did really good. And I said, so this is one that I could do again if I did this. And so what I started doing is I had some index cards, and I started, after he would, if he said it was fire, I would then go back to the link, write down the recipe, put it on a card, and put it in a recipe box. Cause I'm like, I want to be that person. I want to be like my grandma. She didn't write things down, but that was her love language for 47 years with my grandfather, is making sure that that food was always on the table for him when he came home from the factory. And I'm really enjoying it now. And so that anxiety and stress I had from the kitchen and cooking is really kind of melted away because of love.
Nice.
I
That's
mean, I
awesome.
have a similar story in that my mom didn't cook. Like, she wasn't a very good cook, and she said, "If you want something you like, make it." And so I had to learn how to make that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So before we
it just
get moving any further, I do want to let everyone know I would suggest that if you have your skillet ready, get it on the stove, whether you have an electric stove or a gas stove, and start heating up your skillet, because you do want that to be preheated to get that really good brown that we're going to look for on the bread after we butter it and put the sandwich together. And so I have done this mistake before where I don't preheat the skillet, and then I turn it on high thinking, oh, if I turn it all the way up on high, it's going to really hit. And then by the time you put your sandwich in, that first side's going to get burnt because it's a little too hot. So slow warming it up and then having it hold at a, I always say, like, if you have 1 to 10 on your gas stove or electric stove, right in the middle, medium, just medium.
Yeah, that's what I like about this induction, is it literally has put it on and it's got a medium button. Plant.
Oh, nice.
All right. So while we were talking, I melted my um, butter. Again, I put that just on the
So is it
lowest setting
melted
it
all the way
possibly would.
melted?
Yeah,
Okay. So you're going to want to brush that on your bread. So what you're
yeah.
really
You
looking
get a
for
brush.
is kind of like this consistency where it's like soft. So I'm going to go for this softened part, because I had to do the same thing. I had to warm mine up for about 5 seconds in the microwave. So I'm really going to utilize this softened part that's still solidified.
But otherwise, this other one is getting soft. Like, I've got a half a stick. But I do have one of these fancy little brushes.
Yes, you could use that. Yeah.
50%.
Now I'm going to get a plate out of my cabinet here. And so we can go ahead and start buttering our bread while our skillet's gonna getting heated. So like I said, I just have normal sandwich bread from the store. You could use any kind of bread. You could use a fresh loaf that you slice yourself. There's actually no rules on how thin or how thick that bread needs to be sliced. Again, here in the States, like, just good old fancy store-bought sandwich bread is just convenient. And then I'm going to tilt my camera a little bit so you can see. I'm just going to use some of this softened part.
I mean, if it's Texas toast bread, it might take a little longer to toast.
You know what I would do is I would just double up on cheese so that you have a good cheese to bread ratio. So I'm just,
there
gonna
you go.
spread this softened butter. Now I will say that I think getting it all the way to the edges is part of it's a little trick that really makes a difference. You wouldn't think so, but just getting it all the way to the edges really helps.
Now, do you use the butt end of the bread too?
I've never used the butt end. I like to use the butt ends of the bread to feed the birds.
I don't know. I personally really like the crust.
Yeah, I mean, but that could work too. The idea is
Yeah,
that you're
see, this
gonna,
this butter is not that soft, so I go to spread it and it goes to tear the bread. I
yeah.
was gonna try the other one.
The worst is when you go to a
Except for,
fancy restaurant and they bring you the fancy bread on a plate, a chilled plate, and then they bring you a basket of bread and you're like, I can't even spread it.
all right, so we're trying to go all the way to the edges
Yep.
and pretty generously, it looks like.
Yeah. The more you use, the more it's going to really add flavor because it's that fat, but also it's going to give it that good toast because it's going to melt a little into the bread and you want it to give it that good sear.
Uh, how many types of have you tried? Like other types of cheese? I'm
Oh,
I'm always
yeah.
looking for variations.
So I've used cream cheese. I've used cheddar. I've used Swiss. I've even buttered the other side of the, like I've buttered the bread. And then what I've done is before I put it in the skillet, I actually sprinkle some fresh Parmesan on the butter before I toast it. So I've even like had
Now
Parmesan
you're
across
buttering just one side or both
one
sides?
side, just one side. And that side you butter is going to be the side that goes face down in the skillet.
Got it. All right. I'm trying to think like if I've ever actually made a grilled cheese now that I think about it.
Really?
I mean, I will get like a corn tortilla and put like two corn tortillas and put cheese between them.
Sure.
But
I always keep tortillas in my house. And again, I like whole wheat, or they also have protein tortillas that are plant-based.
now, how old can the bread be to do this?
How old does the bread need to be?
Or how old can it be? Can it be pretty old bread?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not moldy, as long as it's like edible and safe to eat. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I've got four of them. What's next?
All right, so you got your bread buttered.
Yeah.
Got your bread buttered. And then you're really just going to, I'm going to transfer this over. Let's see if this works here.
I even bought butter bread.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
flavor it is.
I'm going to try this here with the skillet and the camera. I hope this works.
All right. So we're still at like 50% heat.
Okay. And you can kind of feel, and again, good way to test is take a little water, put it in your hand, like run the water in your kitchen sink, and then just spritz it on here. And if you can hear it sizzling and see it beating up and sizzling, you know your skillet's ready.
All right. So do we put butter side down or the other side down?
So yeah, so I'm gonna take the butter side down and you wanna have your cheese ready. So I have my cheese
Oh yeah.
ready. So I've got my cheese ready. So you're going to put one slice down. And when you do that, you're going to hear that sizzle and you're going to want to have a spatula handy because very quickly these cooks pretty quickly. So I'm going to put that down. And then I'm going to put the one slice of the yellow American cheese and another slice of the white American cheese. And then I'm
You
going
just
to,
said any kind of cheese that really melts well. Have you
yeah,
ever
any
did
good
if you
melting
went to
cheese. Yep.
France? Have you done any French cheeses?
I haven't. And then you're going to just
I
put
know
that
you went
slice of bread with the butter side up because as that
try to
cheese
match
melts,
this.
yeah, as that cheese melts, it's going to start to like almost like adhere to the inside of the bread. And you're going to see it sizzling around the corners.
Oh, the smell is so phenomenal already.
And you kind of just watch it, but you'll know by how the bread moves if it's like ready to sort of take a look at. So just give it a minute. The idea is being
When
patient with this because it's real easy to think like, oh, is it done yet? Let me turn the heat up a little bit more. That's how you can accidentally overcook it, like burn the sides. Now, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, I loved a burnt grilled cheese. I liked the flavor of the burnt part of the grilled cheese. I not so much as an adult anymore, but when I was a kid, I did.
yeah, and when you say move, it probably when it gets just crispy enough that it actually slides a little bit. Is that what
Right.
you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
So, um, I see a little bit of possible smoke coming. That one moved.
So take a look
See?
at the butt. There you go.
Ah, I burned that one.
Yep. It was a little hotter in the center. That's why I usually only do one sandwich at a time because the heat source, you want to have it at the center of the heat source so that you get that even toast around the sandwich. So if
Well,
I had
this
two in
this
here,
fancy pan brags that the temperature is even.
yeah. So if I had two sandwiches in here, the heat source being in the center, I would have to rotate the sandwich before I flipped it to try and get the even toast on both sides. So let me take a look at this. See that? Perfect color
Oh yes.
and how
Think
it's like evenly toasted. And that getting that butter to the sides is really what gives it that crisp crunch when you bite into it. So yeah, I recommend doing one sandwich at a time just because of the heat source. It doesn't matter how big your pan is. You could have a big pan and say, I can fit 4 sandwiches. Got to remember the heat source. You want it directly over the heat source so that it's cooking evenly.
Now, what are common ways you serve this or things you serve this with?
Sure. So sometimes I doctor it up and along with putting cheese, I'll also put some pre-cooked bacon. So you cook your bacon however you cook it. Use a paper towel
Oh,
to
look
get
at
it
that
nice
one. How golden that one is. And look in the
yeah.
center. Oh!
And then I also like to put sliced tomato with bacon inside the sandwich. And you would do it the same way. You add the cheese, then you add the bacon and the tomato, and then put the slice of bread on top and cook it the same way we're cooking it now. But a grilled cheese just like this, I love to make a bowl of tomato soup. And then I like to cut it
Okay. So
to
wait a
strips.
second. You put the tomato and bacon in it while you melt it. You don't like melt
Yep.
it and then
Nope.
open it and slide a piece of
Yep.
tomato in.
I do it. Yep.
So I guess you'd have to put the cheese on the outer. So you put tomato, it'd be between the two slices of cheese, so it melts on the outside.
So I just flipped it again. This
All right.
side's a little toastier, so I'm giving the other side just a 30-second sear.
Look at that. Look how oops, mine, someone came out. All right.
All right, so I'm going to
But
transfer this over to my plate.
I think I might
And
turn
then,
it down just a little. Running.
and then I'm going to cut into it. You'll hear that crunch. Cut into it. It's pretty hot. I'm going to use my oven mitt just so that I don't burn my fingers here. But yeah, and you got that real melted gooey cheese in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to try it with just one to see if you could get a better evenly browned.
Yeah, but it also could be the pan wasn't as warmed up as I thought it was.
Yeah, I've tried it with cream cheese where I soften cream cheese and I put like a slice of American and then spread some cream cheese on the inside of one of the slices. Cream cheese is just delicious. I mean, I use cream cheese a lot in my recipes.
All right, so look at this. When I go, here it is, pulling
Yep.
it apart.
Yep. That's what you want.
Holy crap,
Have
roly.
you
All
taste
right,
now you
I'm
gotta
excited.
taste it or taste it because that's the best part.
So you didn't even, we didn't put any seasonings on it, nothing.
Mm-mm.
Oh, doesn't really need any seasoning.
Mm-mm. It's a
Hmm.
great, I think it's really great in the colder months. It's just a hot, gooey sandwich. It's great in the colder months. You could dip it into any type of soup. Because really, when you think about it, soup, you like to serve with bread, and cheese just goes delicious on any bread. So you might like have a brie that you put on a brioche or on a baguette that you dip into like some soup. So a grilled cheese is really just great for dipping into soups.
Sorry, I just flipped my other one. Look at this.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. All right. Mouth is full.
That's it. Pretty simple.
It's simple but heavenly and
Mm-hmm.
quick.
Yep. I always said this
You
is, I
said,
mean, if you have kids, like I'm sure this would be excellent for anyone who has children because man, you could whip these out pretty quickly. They don't take long to cook. There's not a lot of groceries that you need.
well, for that matter, this could be one of the first things you teach the kids to cook.
Mm-hmm.
Because all they have to do is basically toast both sides. It's not like a complicated, they need to learn how to make it to their desired toastiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, that one came out, I don't think I put enough butter to the edge.
Probably not. But as you'll see that when you eat it, it tastes just as good. That's why I said it's one of those things that you could cook that even if you mess it up, it's still edible. It's still delicious.
So you said a common way would be like now to put a slice of tomato
Like
and
maybe like,
bacon already
yep,
pre-cooked.
bacon. Yep. And then putting the other slice
Because
of
I was
bread.
thinking if you put the tomato in there, the tomato itself would make it so that it, man, I don't have the skills to open these plastic things.
Huh. Yeah, they're tough.
When I make a grilled cheese, sometimes I put the tomato in and then I'll sprinkle a little bit of garlic powder
Mm-hmm.
or do
Inside,
the yeah, yeah, because then it's sort of got a nice little garlicky flavor with the tomato and then Parmesan cheese is like you said a kind of it doesn't melt quite as well, but it's a great flavor with the tomato.
Mm-hmm. Now I use the Parmesan on the outside. So the buttered
Oh, on the
side,
outside to make a oh, that sounds
yeah, so
delicious.
it kind of makes it crispier and kind of gives it a crunch and it browns that Parmesan.
Yeah.
I actually was at the store recently and bought some Parmesan crisps, which were literally just like looked like
Mm-hmm.
little
They're
crackers, which
delicious.
were just 100% Parmesan.
Yep, those are delicious.
So this butter still is, even though it's been out for like almost an hour, is not soft enough. Spread it. Just almost getting there.
So I've been thinking that a grilled cheese, one, I want to learn how to make a good roasted pepper soup, like a cream soup, because I think a roasted pepper
Okay.
soup would be really good to dip a grilled cheese in.
I know we had someone who taught us how to roast the pepper over an open flame if you had a gas stove. I'm trying to remember what recipe that was. Did one. All right.
So that's it.
I almost, because I have this giant onion I need to use up, I almost want to put a slice of onion in. But that would change the taste a lot.
I've
Right,
also
anybody have any
learned,
final questions?
yeah, so I've also learned, because you were talking about an onion, again, something I never would have known, never would have been even thought to like look into, but I learned that if you dice an onion and you have it for a recipe, but you don't want the onion flavor to be overwhelming, because you're using an onion you have, like maybe the recipe calls for a purple onion that has like a milder flavor, but all you have is a yellow onion. You can chop up the onion, and then if you just run water over it or soak it in water for about like 30 seconds to a minute, it pulls some of that strong flavor out. So then when you cook it and it becomes part of your recipe, it's less strong.
Okay.
I know. Who in what world did
I'm
I ever
usually
think
trying
I
to
would
make
know
it more
that?
strong. I don't know. I'm usually trying to add more onion to make it more strong, but
I love onion.
so does it reduce the smell, or it does the smell and the taste? I mean, because
I
we
haven't
taste
tried
with
it
our,
yet, but it says that it takes a little bit of that strength of the onion flavor out if you don't have a milder onion.
I, I keep putting the bread down and forgetting to put the cheese on it. So need to,
How many are you
it's
making
just
over there?
I'm just doing the whole loaf.
Oh,
I'm gonna share with people.
nice.
All right.
That's
Now,
it. Any questions?
I was thinking you really wanted to reduce your butter, but increase your flavor. Ghee, clarified butter, which is just butter concentrate. So like I make my own. Um, and I recently got ghee, which is butter flavored cooking spray.
Yep.
So I'm going to try
Crisco
one with the
also.
cooking spray.
Crisco has a butter
But
flavored Crisco that I'll use for frying, like especially chicken.
I guess here, let me switch the camera over. Just show this real quick. So yeah, I mean, it's got, if you look at it, it
Oh yeah.
really butters it. See?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Get those edges. Get those edges.
actually seems like it's got more butter than I was putting. So here, will do. Any final questions, anybody? Thank you so much for sharing, and especially sharing your passion for cooking.
You know, I'm kind
That
of like,
the
now that I've
story of
got over this hurdle, or like I've been coming, I have some things I learned from my family in England, like traditional sausage rolls, and things, and that utilizes puff pastry, and you could either make your own puff pastry or use store-bought. I tend to use store-bought just because
uh-oh.
I work. So I'm just saying, like,
You
now
learn
that
how
I've
to you
gotten,
learn how to make like haggis. I know is not English, but that sounds like haggis to me.
no, it's a very simple recipe. But it's delicious. It's a staple in England. Again, you could go to pubs or even the grocery stores and they're going to have like quick sausage rolls. I say sausage rolls in England are the equivalent to chicken fingers in America. Chicken fingers are everywhere,
Okay.
right? And well,
So
sausage rolls
maybe
are
we'll have
everywhere.
you on making something more fancy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we've had a lot of requests over the years from people in the rest of the world who don't have grilled cheese as part of their culture on how to make it. I was a little intimidated myself.
Really? And now you
Yeah.
see how easy it is.
Oh, most of the grilled cheese sandwiches they make out there is they use really fancy ingredients and they layer it and do all this other stuff and extra. And I was like,
nope, this is your very typical American grilled cheese across the board.